Hello and welcome back. And for those of you who have been paying attention all along, please excuse me, I was actually off by one. It happens.
Pound sign fail.
Yeah, pound sign fail. No. We are not advertising that today.
No.
It's not a pound sign, it's a hashtag, remember?
It is a pound sign as well, but no, in the context of Twitter typically.
All right, so Mr. Richard Sidaway is one of the PowerShell MVPs that I've actually had the good fortune of working with off and on for the last couple of years. And we have him online, and he'll be talking us through the evolution of PowerShell and what it's changed, how it's changed over the years and over the last 10 years. So go ahead, Richard, and thank you.
Thank you. As Keith said, Richard Sidaway, I've been working with PowerShell since the early betas of PowerShell 1, when it was still known as Monad. I'm based in England. I've been a PowerShell MVP for the last 8-9 years. Been blogging about PowerShell since 2006. I was actually one of the few people in the audience when PowerShell was released, and who actually understood what it was, because there was a big demo, but nobody really knew it at that time. I've written some of the PowerShell books. I've been a speaker on PowerShell and related topics for 10 years or so. Involved in organizing the US PowerShell Summit and the European Conference. I started the world's first PowerShell user group, and I'm going to show you a few things that have changed over the years. And my favorite feature in PowerShell has to be remoting, because the ability to go out and work with a whole bunch of servers very easily just makes life so much easier for admins. All right, that's not supposed to happen. So where are we? I'm sorry I'm having to do this live, but I've not been well and I didn't get a chance to record the video. So PowerShell 1, November 2016, November 2006, 137 commandlets, get WMI object was the only remoting object option, and you had to script everything. PowerShell 2, we got remoting, we got jobs, we got modules, and we got the ISE. PowerShell 3, we got sim commandlets and sim sessions. We got PowerShell workflows, and PowerShell 4, we got DSC. And in PowerShell 5, we've had PowerShell classes, package management, PowerShell get, the archive modules, switch management, and local accounts. All of those things that I've just rattled through have dramatically changed the way we can get stuff done. The basic job that we're still trying to do hasn't changed, but our ability to do it has changed dramatically. And it hasn't stopped there. As has been said, we've got PowerShell 6 coming along. It's open source, so we can work on Linux, Mac, Windows. We've got remoting over SSH and whatever comes next. And that's the great thing about PowerShell, is there is always something else to come along. So what I'm going to do is just show you a few things that have changed over those years. So we'll get that out of the way, and we'll bring up this. And anybody who's heard me talk about PowerShell over the years knows that WMI has been one of my favorite things. And one of the big problems with WMI is the fact that it works over DCOM. So as you can see here, DCOM is firewall unfriendly, it's router unfriendly, it gets stopped by all sorts of things. And as soon as you try to hit something remote, you're going to, at some stage or other, hit this RP server is unavailable. The answer, which came with PowerShell 3, is the sim commandlets, which run over WS-man. They don't care about the firewall, they laugh at firewalls. And just to show this, I'm going to create a session, a sim session. Sim sessions, if you've not used them before, are like remoting sessions, but they're just for the sim commandlets. And you can't even create a DCOM-based sim session against that. But WS-man works fine, and you're good to go. And just to prove that it was the firewall, we'll go back to our target machine, enable the file, allow that through the firewall, and if the demo gods are with us, it now works. So using the sim commandlets, you don't care about the firewall, you don't need to administer the firewall, and you can just bypass it. And because the later versions of Windows Server all have remoting enabled, you've got sim connectivity. The other big change is that we now have commandlets where previously we've needed to script. So to give you a couple of examples of this, if you have worked with WMI at all, you'll recognize the logical disk class, but you'll see there that it tells you that you've got a drive type of 3, which if you don't know what that means, you've got to go and look it up. And the spaces and sizes are all in bytes, which you can get round, but you've got to do a bit of scripting. Which means more work, where in reality, you'd much prefer to do that and get the everything done for you. So you find out exactly what the drive type is straight off. You find out what the sizes are in nice, easy to use units that you can recognize and work with. Because if you can tell me on the fly what those sizes are from the original WMI commandlet, you're doing better than I am. The same goes with network adapters, which is, again, another thing that we use fairly often. But the problem with the WMI class is that it gives us everything. So we need to do a bit of filtering, which again is more work. And if you've been doing any of the MSc exams over the years, you remember those questions where it's with the least administrative effort? That's where PowerShell's going. It gets simpler and simpler with time. So we've filtered that down, but again, we had to look at what the filter, how we were going to filter it, what values we needed to put into the filter. Whereas these days, you can use getNetAdapter, and it brings back the information. And in many respects, it's a better set of information because you get the status, you get the link speed in a sensible format, and you actually get the name of the adapter as you see it in the GUI. Skip that. Similar sort of thing with IP addresses. Again, you've now got commandlets to do it. The bit that actually intrigues me is that those networking commandlets that I've been showing you, they're all actually WMI based. They're based on a new set of WMI classes that were introduced with Windows 8, which is why you don't find them on down-level machines. But there's some simple things as well that have been brought in that just really make life easier. So you've probably all used getChildItem or one of its aliases, and you get the you can get the files and in a folder. But just see folders. The only way that you could do it in the past was to use whereObject to actually filter it on this PS's container. And a similar thing if you just want to see the files. And if you noticed this one, I've had to use the old style where syntax because I needed to use the not. Whereas now you've got just the option to get a directory or use the file switch and get files. So you've got this whole ease of use coming along that just makes life so much easier. Excuse me. Now, I mentioned at the top that remoting was one of my favorites. And with PowerShell 5.x or 5.1 on Server 2016, you get something called PowerShell Direct, which means that you can remote over the Hyper-V VM bus rather than using WSMan. So just to show this in action, we'll set the machine. Start that. We'll set the machine. We'll get some credentials. I'm not going to show you those. It's just test machines. But we'll open up a session. And the important thing to see here is that I'm not using computer name for the session. I'm using VM name. So this is on Hyper-V. It has to be a Hyper-V host running 2016, and the guests have to be Windows 10 or Server 2016. You can also use the virtual machine ID, but that's a GUID. It's all a lot harder to type. Notice that if you look at the session, the computer type is virtual machine, not the remote machine like you normally see. And once you've done that, you can just run a standard remoting command using invoke command. And it just works, and it works very well. It's great for administering machines where you've created a new machine, a new VM, and you want to do something to it, and you're not using DSC for whatever reason. Especially good for setting IP addresses, because if you try to do normal remoting and set the IP address across the remoting session, it will break the session. If you try to use WMI to do it, you have to wait for the WMI timeout unless you wrap it in a job. Using the VM bus, it just works very, very nicely. The other really great thing that's come with PowerShell 5 and remoting is that you can copy files across remoting sessions. So you get two parameters, to session and from session. They're mutually exclusive, so you can't copy from one remote machine and go straight to another remote machine. You have to bring it local and then copy it out again. That's not too difficult to do. So set the path, and we'll just copy this up to the remote machine. So again, for pushing stuff out to remote machines, couldn't be easier. And you saw how quick it is running it over the session, and that's an 11 meg file. Just went over, and then you can see the results coming back. And we'll tidy that up. We'll be good admins and tidy up after ourselves. One of the great automation areas has always been AD, and it's where I really got started in automation back when I was using VBScript. And I just want to show you these two options. So if you go back to PowerShell 1, one of the big complaints was that there weren't any AD commandlets. Technically, there still aren't any AD commandlets in PowerShell. They're supplied by the AD team, but it's probably splitting hairs to most people. So what you had to do was the .NET system.directory services.directory entry. Now, if my memory is serving me correctly, there was what's known as a type accelerator available in PowerShell 1, ADSI in the square brackets, which meant that you could work with AD, but with a little less typing. So if you wanted to create a new user, you had to do all of this. So you had to set the OU where you wanted to create it. If you didn't have that, it would go into the user's container as normal. You had to set the domain. You had to give it a name. The target is where you actually wanted to go. And then you told it that you were going to create a user in the target OU, and you would then set the SAM account name, the user principal name, and set info. And it had the very disconcerting habit of working, but actually telling you it threw an error. Now you've got a new AD user commandlet, and you just hit that and off you go. Searching was even worse in that you sorry. You had to tell it where you wanted to search. You had to create a search object. Now, this is AD SI Searcher, which, again, if I remember correctly, came in PowerShell 2.0. And this is System Directory Services Directory Searcher, which starts to get a mouthful to state, and it's even worse when you're trying to type it in a hurry. You had to come up with a search filter using the LDAP filter syntax. You've got the usual search limits, and then you had to tell it to find all of the accounts that matched your filter. What you got back was a results object, not a directory entry object. So you then had to loop through this, pulling out the properties that you wanted. And it's a fairly limited set of properties. So if you wanted to go beyond that, you had to actually create a directory entry and pull the stuff out of that, which started to get quite long-winded. It works. And you get the results back. But it's an awful lot of work when you can compare it to what you've got these days, which is get AD user, tell it where you want to search, filter, star means everything, and then you just select the name and the distinguished name, and you get the results back. One of the things that has always intrigued me with PowerShell is the providers that Kenneth mentioned in the opening. A provider opens up some kind of data store in exactly the same way as the file system works. But it's a technology that never really seemed to get going. And one of the things that comes with the AD module is an AD provider. So if you, and it comes as a AD drive. The syntax is a little painful to use, which is probably, let's get that away a bit better. So that's fair enough as you get to there, and you can see the naming configuration, the configuration stuff, the schema, and the associated DNS zones, all of which you can basically work through. But you have, unfortunately, you have to use this sort of distinguished name type context to get in, syntax to get into it, which makes life a little bit difficult. And it's the same with a lot of the providers. The syntax just doesn't quite come off properly, which is a great shame. But if you want to raise some eyebrows, doing a directory listing of your AD is always good to rattle the new admin, or to do a dir through the registry. So as I've said, the great excuse me. The great thing with PowerShell is that the evolution, as well as giving us new functionality, has actually made life easier for the admin. What was 10-line script is now a one-line commandlet. To put that into context, I can remember shortly before PowerShell actually shipped, I was working on an Exchange migration, Exchange 5.5 into Exchange 2003, I think it was. And I was asked if I could work out how many of the users were actually enabled for Outlook Web Access. And this was a 12,000 seat organization. There was no way I was going to do that by hand. I'd probably still be doing it now. So I wrote a script to do it using the only tool I had available at the time, which was VB Script. And it took me 86 lines of code to do this. Exchange 2007 and PowerShell came out. And for fun, I repeated the exercise. It's one line of code. It's 3 commandlets pipelined together. So 80 odd lines of code go down to 1, and testing becomes so much quicker. It took me best part of a day to get that VB script working properly. To get the PowerShell working properly, a few minutes. That's the big difference with PowerShell. The productivity, the time savings, and with it getting easier and easier to use and easier to get your job done. If you're not learning PowerShell, you should be. So I'm going to just move on to the last slide, which is just a reminder that it's all available on MSDN. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the anniversary, and I hope to see you at one of the conferences sometime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Awesome.
That was awesome. Now, one of the things, I don't know if you actually remembered this, but I have been, and since Windows 8, the program manager for WMI and for that remoting protocol that you use in the background called WinRM, and that allows you to set up some of those sessions. So I'm delighted to see that it helps you. It helped me certainly when I started with WMI. I was writing C code, and when I got smart and switched to using PowerShell, it was about 30 times faster. So
you weren't just typing more quickly?
No,
right.
No, but I really do understand and appreciate the advantages, and I'm glad that you got some good use out of it as well.
And can you imagine what the code golf would be like in the old way of doing things? So the examples that Richard was given at the start, where he had 10 lines of code down to 1, on his demo, code golf, I can imagine, would be phenomenally long.
I don't want to review that code.
No, but that's why you got Pester to test it all. So, but the idea is there. I mean, it just shows how minimalist now code can be to achieve the same goal. So it's awesome stuff.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I hope that you are feeling better. And we're going to go ahead and go on to our next commercial break with our thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.